Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's podcast broadcast of This Week in Science. So glad you're here. So glad Justin's here. So glad Blair's here. So glad we're all here on this solstice. Oh, my goodness.
Is that what happened?
Yeah. Early morning, little late night. Although in most places, this is not the longest, well, the latest sunset. It's just the longest day of the year. But as we get started, just want to remind everyone that they can hit those likes and hearts and notifications and subscribes and tell friends that things are happening here because it's getting started. It's time to let everyone know and hit the algorithms and make everybody find This Week in Science because we are going live, not taped. And if there are things that happen during the show, they might get edited out by our wonderful editor, Rachel. Ready to go?
Thank you, Rachel. Yeah.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. All right. Okay, starting the show for this week. In 3, 2. This is TWIS This Week in Science, episode number 931, recorded on Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Super Summer Solstice Science. Say that 3 times fast. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we are going to fill your heads with hit songs, old art, and frog sounds. But first...
Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. Things are rising up on planet Earth. Atmospheric carbon is rising, and we wait. Temperature keeps rising, and we complain about the weather. The sea levels are rising, and we watch. And while awareness is also rising, action is not quite rising to the level that should be expected in an emergency. Unless the humans have a second habitable planet that they have told no one about, this will affect all of them too. The worst of global warming is yet to come, and the only thing that will stop the temperature rising is you. Not just you, because everyone else, including you, needs to rise up and take action, control of the situation. I would do it myself, but I'm busy on that day. But you have been chosen by fate, by destiny, by mere chance and dumb luck to be alive in the age of energy consequences. And you need to rise to the challenge right after sitting down for another episode of This Week in Science, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind that can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science. What's happening, what's happening, what's happening this week in science.
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We're back again to talk about all the science we want to talk about. Woo, 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 woo. And it is June 21st, the solstice, which is, scientifically auspicious. Yes, scientifically. Stonehenge.
The day when all the days start to get shorter.
I know, it's my least favorite day of the year. Anyway, no, I love it. It's big.
It is also World Giraffe Day, which is because of the long necks, the longest day. It's always the same.
It's also, what is it? It's National Selfie Day. So I'll just take this right here. There you go. Take a little selfie. Yeah, you did that. Yeah, National Selfie Day. I think it's also like National whatever, some related podcasts. I don't know. There's all sorts of days here, but you know what? This is a science day, and it's the longest day of the year. So I hope you're ready for a tight 90-minute show. We're going to bring it to you. Okay.
So you can go howl at the moon when it finally comes out later.
Yeah.
Exactly. I have stories about horse toes, hit songs, pained brains, and good guts. What do you have, Justin?
I have got the thing that kills everyone, another cancer cured, why snakes, and the oldest Neander art ever found.
Okay, I'm waiting for the second
boy.
half of that next to last sentence, but that's okay. We'll figure it out.
No, that's it. That was it. You mean why snakes?
There's no more.
That's it.
Oh.
Why snakes?
That's the story. Why
Okay.
snakes?
Okay. All right. Can't wait.
Why snakes? Okay, and Blair, what's in the animal corner?
Yes, I have dinos, rats, and frogs.
Dinos, rats, and frogs. Okay. Well, on that note, we will hop right into the show. No, well, I need to remind you first that if you have not yet subscribed to This Week in Science, you can find us streaming live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time-ish on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. You can find us as TWIS Science on Twitch and Twitter, kind of, and Universidon and Instagram. So look for TWIS Science if it's not just TWIS. This Week in Science is a great thing to follow. We're also, podcasting everywhere. This gets edited, turned into a podcast. Got the podcast going out all over the place. You can subscribe to that. If this is a lot, just go to twis.org. You can find show notes, all sorts of things related to subscribing there. Okay, but now it's time to ribbit the science. Okay, let's start with horse toes. How about that?
Horse toes. Okay.
Yeah, because horse toes.
I'm already confused.
They're on their toe
It's
already.
It's the
on
first
a singular toe.
A singular
It's the
toe.
first headline of the first story of the day, and Justin is already confused.
Right.
Horse toes.
So horse toes.
They're
or
I've shoot a few horses
They're
in
on
my
a toe.
day.
what used
And I've
to be
never noticed-
toes. So there was a hypothesis going around based on a paper back in about 2018 that there were a number of toes that kind of got mixed into the whole support system of the hoof. So the hoof itself is the third finger of what would be a 5-digited or a 4-digited hand. And so the toe, that single hoof is considered to, that's one toe that's down on the ground. But then in 2018, some researchers were like, oh no, we don't know where these other toes went. And so maybe they just melded into things. And look, the frog, it's not really anything from anywhere else. And so that's where the other toes went. They became the frog. And it's all part of the support structure. Just in there.
How did a frog get involved?
That's the part of the soft underbelly of the hoof that you have to clean out and make sure there's nothing in it that's hurting.
I've done that part. I just didn't know what it was called then.
It's called the frog.
That was
because it looks like a frog, possibly.
Huh.
I think that might be.
I
Never
suppose
heard.
if you really squint and need glasses.
If you kind of squint, you can see it's a little crouching frog, but I digress. The horses were related to other species of horse-like animals, tapirs, hyperions, others. And in the evolution, researchers have been questioning what happened to all the toes. And so we've got the tapir that had 4 toes in front, 3 behind. Each was individually hooved, so like toenails with an underlying foot pad. Horses are not like that. Asses, zebras, just a single toe. That's it. Leftover original third toe. It's got the hoof around it, the soft underbelly of the frog underneath, and a bunch of researchers just published in the Royal Society Open Science their study that has come to the conclusion that, well, while others may have said that there were more toes involved in the hoof, in fact, modern horses have lost their toes.
Great.
There's only one.
So what we thought.
So what you thought, it's just a single toe. It's the third toe. Those other toes kind of went away. And they're not there anymore. They de-evolved, if you want to put it that way. Researchers say the frog of the horse's hoof evolved independently of the side toes as a unique structure, providing shock absorption and traction during locomotion, and that these one-toed horses have a different shape from the main toe of the foot of 3-toed horses. And so maybe that has to do with weight distribution and ecological habitat. But in case anyone was still really worried or wondering about it, horses don't have a lot of toes. They've got one, and they stand on it.
Well, they have 4. Because
Right. Yes.
yeah. Mhm.
Each leg. Okay.
Hopefully they have 4. A
Yeah,
one-toed horse would be in trouble.
I love the adaptation of various digits based on evolutionary need and ecological need, and that we've seen this happen. Before chickens don't have teeth anymore because they don't really need them, but the genes are still there. So should the need come back, could we find that horses may evolve in one point in the future to have different digits reaching down into their hooves? Who knows? But right now,
Yeah.
one toe each hoof.
Well, I wonder how long it'll take for dogs' dew claws to finally go away. 'Cause
Disappear.
They're they're not doing anything.
Right. They're just kind of hanging out there.
Yeah.
Not
I don't know. Maybe they're using them when I'm not looking.
possible, but I don't think so.
No.
Don't know about that. All right. Enough about horse toes, Justin. Let's talk about, a wonderful thing to talk about. Climate change. Climatia? What could make it worse?
Climatia, indeed. Central heating and air conditioning. Very much an American thing. So this isn't as widespread around the world as it is in the United States. Around 9 out of 10 American homes have air conditioning.
Wow.
While the
9
other
out of 10?
Coming
9
from
out
the
of 10.
West Coast and like the Bay Area and now in Pacific Northwest, I'm just like amazed at that number. Wow.
Yeah, does that mean there are houses with 10 air conditioners in it that are weighing out the numbers?
Central air.
Okay, I don't understand how that's possible. But I believe you. It's crazy.
Yeah,
okay.
it's because most of the country is not San Francisco. That's where the other 1 in 10 are. Places where historically air conditioning hasn't been needed. So developing countries tend not to have it. Northern Europe has never really needed air conditioning, and so it doesn't have it. And they're typically, because there's typically a handful of hot days, and they just kind of soldier through it. Maybe a household fan can handle it. That's about it. But of course, all of this is changing because of global warming. And the heat gets too hot to handle around equatorial latitudes and increasingly uncomfortable weather patterns in northern nations. The need for protective human cooling is set to skyrocket. So I don't know if Blair would understand this, but air conditioners take a lot of electricity to run.
No, I have heard.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's heard. She has, in San Francisco, they still don't have air conditioning.
No.
It's mind-boggling.
I'm on the peninsula. I still don't have air conditioning.
So it's enough, actually, that it can stress out the grid. Like, they start to tell people, don't run it until this hour or before that hour, because you can get rolling blackouts. It just can really... Yeah, one of the things I read is even New York, which everybody in New York, I don't think, has an air conditioner, because that's it's usually relatively okay there without one. It will bump up their grid by like 30% when there's a hot day and people start running the AC. So where do we get the electricity to run all of these air conditioners?
That's a great question.
Mostly from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
Okay, so not only does that mean more carbon is released into the atmosphere on these hot days, it also means a tremendous amount of heat is being produced by air conditioning units themselves. This is a whole thing that's like, well, what if you're making cold over here? Because air conditioners, they don't actually put cold air into a room. They take heat out of the room. They're a heat pump.
Yeah. They have to take it and put it somewhere. Yeah.
That heat is conveyed out of the room or the building into the already hot air of the day outside, which is what was causing the need for the air conditioning and raising the outside temperatures even higher. Actually, it could be as much as 1 degree Celsius reported for big cities on hot days from the air conditioning heat pumps themselves. So anyway, all that is somewhat related to this study published in the journal Scientific Reports by environmental economists at the University of Venice. They're warning how the demand for air conditioners and electricity for cooling in Europe and India between now and 2050 could accelerate the conditions that cause the warming in the first place by creating increased emissions to power the cooling needed to counter the warming caused by the increased emissions. Studies suggest air conditioning uptake could double in Europe and grow fourfold in India, with probably a goal of reaching about 40% homes in both regions. Though personally, I think it'll actually be much higher in Europe, even though we were just talking before the show, the building I'm in does not have air conditioning. There's no conceivable way of putting it through a wall or a window here currently. If the heat continues to rise, people will need it. It will be a safety thing, and so a way will be found. So, yeah,
that's the question. Is it going to be people who can afford it and can adapt their environment to them, or people who can't afford it and can't live there anymore because they're dying of heat, and so then they move?
Yeah, because it's something like it's going to be a not move situation for Northern Europe. You're going to be
where are they going to go?
6% hotter overall trend, but then hottest days will be even hotter than that. They'll go up maybe double of that.
Yeah.
Over the averages. India is looking at a 20% average increase.
Ouch.
With the hot days being much higher, and because of economics largely, and also the ginormous population size, people aren't going to be moving. So the other problem is a lot of affordable air conditioning tends not to have the most energy efficient design. Basically, they threw some numbers out here. This is totally meaningless numbers. They're predicting additional rise in CO2 emissions between 7 and 17 million tons in Europe and 38 and 160 million tons in India. I think it's probably going to be higher than.
Yeah. So we've got this. It is a catch-22. It is, days are getting hotter, so people need to find ways to stop the heat. So they're going to go to air conditioning. Air conditioning is going to be a problem because of fossil fuels, unless we can come up with other energy sources. And also, air conditioning and the chemicals it uses and the technologies it uses is not sustainable. So it's just positive
the gains
feedback
that we're going to get elsewhere from trying to curb, we're going to have to run through just to run these air conditioners. And the thing is, too, it's not going to take very much heat for all of Europe. They're looking at temperatures, and I get it. It's temperatures. It's not that much higher. But it's very humid in Northern Europe. People don't realize it because nobody ever complains, oh, it's cold, but it's a dry cold. It's not or it's a humid cold. Like, nobody cares about humidity when it's always cold. Nobody pays any attention to humidity.
My hair
only
definitely
matters.
cares, but that's okay.
The hair might get frizzy, but nobody's right. The humid heat means that a lower temperature threshold, that the heat becomes kind of unbearable.
Yeah.
So what you need to do, at least for Europe, is you just need to hold on long enough for climate change to reverse the Gulf Stream. Then all of Europe will be thrown into an
mini ice age.
Yeah. So that'll fix it. You just need to hold on a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then it's just going to be snowing and icy all the time.
So it's a not in this story, that I didn't really bring this study for it, but there's the North Sea, the Arctic right now is the warmest it's ever been on record, and by a lot. That's without the even conveyor belt working properly. The heat is just sitting there, and it's spiked. It spiked higher a few times before, but this is right now the longest prolonged highest heat of the Arctic that there has been.
Yep.
And also, you're talking about writing it out. we're probably in for 50 years
Of
of
writing it
CO2
out.
release from the oceans at levels that will be increasing. So
Are you just you're just upset
I'm just
because
saying that this
you
is
don't
what-
have an
this
air
is-
conditioner and you're hot.
and and I was in
Humid in Denmark.
Well, I spent the last week in London, and it's worse there. It's even worse there. And they don't know what to do. They don't have an air conditioning there. All their buildings are 100 years old too. So nobody's ready.
Nobody
for it.
knows what to do.
Nobody's ready for it. But they're going to adjust, and they're going to adjust quick, and it's going to be huge energy, carbon, and heat pumps all operating at once. It's going to be lovely.
Heat pumps are more energy efficient. So if we do have the temperatures changing substantially enough in these areas where they have historically not been good for efficiency, but heat pumps can be very, very efficient heat exchangers and better than a lot of the modern other air conditioning methods that we have. And yeah, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to come up. I know it. Our scientists are going to come up with fusion. It's going to come through, or I don't know, batteries and really good solar, or there's going to be a combo of things.
Fusion is, what is
There
it,
has to
20
be.
years away? And,
Always,
has
yeah.
been for the last 80
Always.
years.
Yeah.
Something like that.
All right. Well,
Anyway,
moving
that's my
on
doom
to
and gloom part of the show.
moving away from the doom
Get
and
that out
gloom
of the
and just
way.
something more positive. Let's talk about how dinosaurs died.
Yeah, I don't know
Wait,
about
but
positive.
Don't we know that? Wasn't it the
Well, this is
the
about a specific group
asteroid
of
the size of Rhode Island? Because I
This
think
is-
that's how we started the Rhode Island measurements.
This
With that
is
extinction event.
this is a specific group of dinosaurs. This is what foiled them in the end. So this is the long neck dinosaurs, which there's been plenty. There's been huge groups of long neck dinosaurs throughout the fossil record. But in particular, there are these ones that just have like the longest necks. They're crazy. And they're partially fused to help support the weight of their head. They're mostly aquatic. And paleontologists have long suspected that made them vulnerable to predators. That it actually wasn't the best strategy, because it's basically like, here, come bite my neck. It's very long. It's huge target, difficult to miss. So researchers studied the unusual necks of two different Triassic species of the Tanystropheus genus, which is a type of reptile distantly related to crocodiles, birds, and dinosaurs. They have these unique necks, as I mentioned, composed of 13 elongated vertebrae. They're not exposed. They have flesh on their neck. 13 elongated vertebrae and strut-like ribs. And they had these stiffened necks. And because of their body shape, the expectation is that they were sit-and-wait predators, which totally makes sense. So they're like whole bodies down below, and then they just have their little head poking up after their long neck. And then they can catch their prey. So there's a long time ago, in 1830, there was an artist rendition of these guys by Henri de la Beche, where the long neck was getting bitten by a predator. But there's been no fossil evidence for that anybody's found. But now there is. So there's careful examination.
He just put himself in the mind of a predator and was like, this
Look
is
at
how
that
I
neck.
get it.
If I had big sharp teeth, I'd want to bite that neck. So they looked at the fossilized bones. They found the necks of two existing specimens representing two different closely related species. They were both severed necks. So, good start. If they're severed, it's a good guess there. There it is, just that long, tantalizing neck, right? And they had some bite marks on them. So, already sounding pretty good. And it had been well known that these two species had well-preserved heads and necks that abruptly ended. There's no body. And so it was long speculated that they were bitten off, but no one had studied it in detail. This is the part of the story that I think is really funny. After an afternoon examining the two specimens in Zurich.
One afternoon, yes, okay.
y'all couldn't get around to it before now. And it took an afternoon. Whatever. Anyway, they concluded that the necks had been bitten off. So the portion of the neck preserved were undisturbed. It really looked like the head and neck were allowed to decay and fossilize without being predated upon. So it sounds like the body was eaten and then the head and neck were left behind because there's not much to eat there. So that makes it look like it was discarded and the main kill was the body. Also, tooth traces at the sever point. So seems accurate. So this is the idea of this is, so at first you think like, okay, this is just an evolutionary dead end, right? Like they got too big, too long, just a huge target for predators. But here's the thing. This genus was around for about 175 million years.
Wow.
So
long time.
Successful.
Long necks, long time. Yes.
Long necks, long time. And so this is a reminder that evolution is a game of trade-offs. So this long neck provided them a benefit, but it also provided a very clear susceptibility. And so, yes, it seems like maybe having this long neck was not a great idea, but hey, 175 million years, we don't have that. So it's successful, I would say. At a certain point, it wasn't anymore, but for a while, those long necks really, really lasted. And they lived for a really long time. They were all over Europe, Middle East, China, North America, South America. So,
I mean, they've got to have behavioral adaptations or had to have had behavioral adaptations related to their long necks. Like, so when they were probably attacked was when they were out in the open and not able to hide or protect themselves.
Right.
Maybe
like was their neck up amongst like a bunch of kelpie type plants? Yeah.
And they're in the water. And so did they have behaviors that like had them pulling their heads back and contracting their necks or bending their necks in interesting ways to make them appear shorter or to protect them? We still have species on this planet, giraffes, lots of birds with long necks. Snakes are just one big long neck.
Yeah, my guess is it was just so that the body could rest at the bottom and then they could go up and down for breaths without having
to move.
I've seen snakes.
Interesting idea.
I've seen snakes do this where in an aquarium the snake will be basically resting on the bottom, but just its head is up so that it can breathe. And I also like kind of picturing that whatever was predating on them spent 175 million years trying to get big enough.
Or sneaky enough.
There's always somebody bigger.
Or sneakier.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So there's your long necks for the longest day of the year.
There's your long necks.
Actually, I might be wrong about it just because the chat room went off on it there. I might be wrong about the asteroid KT event being precisely Rhode Island size. The asteroid was believed to be about 9 miles across. I have no idea how big Rhode Island is, but I feel like it would fit there.
I feel like it would fit like Rhode Island. It's fine.
Like a Rhode Island. Also, it's not a given that the dinosaurs, if the asteroid hadn't hit, that
they would have been around.
Wouldn't have evolved. It's
well,
not a given.
Not.
There's still always mammals were still plentiful. We were pretty diverse around the planet.
They were tiny.
They
were tiny and subterranean.
We were a little bigger than people think. There was actually more diversity than people think.
Things would have been different, for sure.
And all we needed was an ice age. You keep all the lizard folk down towards the equator, we would have a run of the whole north and south parts of the planet, and we would have plenty of time to evolve.
Yeah, and then we could be fighting the dinosaurs over the Amazon and
training,
it'd be great.
Actually,
they'd be protecting the Amazon.
The only thing that might be different is the dinosaurs, probably a bipedal one with some, manipulatable claws, could have been the first really sentient advanced technology.
Now you're in Doctor Who territory. It's
yep. Now it's just wishy-washy, timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly kind of stuff.
The biggest brain dinosaurs also were bipedal. There might be something
Bigger the
to that. There's only-
brain, the bigger the body usually. So
No, this would
yes.
have been like Velociraptor or something. This would have been about human size. Small humans, but still.
Comparatively,
Yeah,
then.
it
We're
had
talking
some
about
of the-
comparative stuff, not, relative, not absolute. All right. Well, moving on from dinosaurs into embryos. This last week, there was the announcement of a bioarchive, a couple of papers that were published on stuff that we've talked about over the last few years, which is stem cells being used to create embryos. We've brought up all sorts of instances of induced pluripotent stem cells being created, creating embryo-like masses of cells that are then being used to create model systems to study human development on, and these balls of cells growing to something like
Uh-oh. It looks like we have technical difficulties. Cue the Ipanema, whatever is it song. So,
Do you want wait?
This is what's interesting is I think the story she's about to tell.
Don't
different.
snook her story. Just you
No,
do
it's
your
not.
next story.
It's not. But this has also been done in China pretty
hold on.
recently.
Hi.
Hey, welcome back.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, it's warning me that my internet is low, and I have no idea why, because I'm not doing anything. So I don't know what's happening. Anywho, yes. So I was saying that these balls of cells that were being developed of the induced pluripotent stem cell kind have been shown to develop into little balls that develop 7 days, 14 days comparatively to human embryos. But this recent announcement was that human embryonic stem cells had been used to create little blastocysts, little balls of embryo-like cells that went to what they say is comparatively about 14 days of human embryonic development. Now, a bunch of people are talking about the issues related to the morals and ethics and how we use human embryonic stem cells and what we use them for, and whether or not we allow the length of time that scientists can look at these balls of cells to be more than 14 days, let them go to 21 days so that scientists can understand a little bit more about that early stage of developmental biology. But related to that, and an interesting aspect, it just published in PLOS Biology, an international team of researchers have been looking at these little balls of cells up to about 5 days old. They've been looking at up to 5-day-old embryos to look at the gene signatures from every single cell in that 5-day-old embryo to determine what's going on, the path that it's on, where it's going. And previous research has shown that about a quarter of the cells don't fit the profile of any known developmental cell type, going into the embryo, going into the placenta, going into some other support cell, or what, a quarter of the cells in the blastocyst at 5 days, the little embryonic ball of cells, doesn't really look like anything else. And so they looked a little bit deeper into it, and they found that these cells have lots and lots of young transposable elements, jumping genes. Jumping genes are the kinds of genes that copy themselves and paste themselves elsewhere in the chromatin. They're like, I'm copying myself, I'm gonna paste myself, I copy myself, I'll paste myself somewhere else. And they're kind of like, it's like the horizontal gene transfer stuff. It's just genes like going, I want to put my face up all over this DNA, but it's not good for DNA and can often lead to mutations. And so we know when jumping genes have been involved, it can lead to cancer, it can lead to neurodevelopmental defects, all sorts of things. And they found in the embryonic cells that were actually embryonic that they had a component that hadn't been seen before. It was a gene called human endogenous virus X. So it's a virus-like gene, not a virus-like gene that suppresses jumping genes. And so what's happening is that this quarter of the cells that didn't turn into really anything, they're like on their own, they ended up going on a program of cell death. They didn't turn into placenta, they didn't turn into embryo. They ended up being selected against and like being killed. So it's as if there's natural selection happening at the cellular level in the embryo for those cells that are best fit to survive. And the ones that are able to suppress the jumping genes are able to move on and become something within the embryo or the placenta. And those that can't suppress the jumping genes, that don't have that virus-like gene, virus H, they go on to die. And that's good for the embryo. It's good for the organism, because if they don't go on to die, then the embryo will fail. So fascinating, like cellular level pruning that takes place to improve the health of the embryo at 5 days.
That's pretty wild.
Right. Super cool. And they have seen that a lot of these jumping genes and other issues, they might explain why a lot of mutations are related to infertility and other issues that occur in reproduction. Oh yeah, cool stuff.
Wild.
Ah, little baby cells, they're being selected. What do you want to talk about, Justin?
Well, gosh, this is this week in cured diseases. Cancer has been cured, at least acute lymphoblastic leukemia. 3 young patients with relapsed T-cell leukemia. This is meaning that they have undergone chemotherapy to combat the leukemia and relapsed with the disease, or didn't manage to eliminate it, have been treated with base-edited T cells. As a bench to bedside collaboration between University College London and Great Ormond Street Hospital for Children, also known as GOSH. So base-edited is not quite like a CRISPR. It's a chemically induced system, so that it's not cutting, which means that you don't get the potential for additional accidental reads to go in, so it's supposedly much cleaner. The paper published in New England Journal of Medicine shows how donor CAR T cells were engineered using editing technology to change single nucleotides so they could fight the leukemia. This is really crucial because the current CAR T therapies that are out there, they need the patient's T cells. They take those out, they re-engineer them, they put them in. This is donor. This is universal donor that they've got here. So what that means is that instead of it, it eventually could be streamlined as a clinical therapy that didn't require you to have your own specialty lab working on re-engineering. So it drops it down from a $2 million treatment to just go see the doctor and they'll take care of it. Huge.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Huge. So now 3 patients, all children. Let's see, there's 13-year-old Alyssa. This is the only one mentioned. Last year was the first person in the world to be treated on the trial for the T-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Cancer of white blood cells is usually treated with chemotherapy, but if it comes back, as it did in her case, it can be very hard to clear. So within 4 weeks of receiving the treatment, Alyssa's leukemia was undetectable. She went on to have a successful bone marrow transplant, is still well and at home almost a year later. I don't actually quite understand, I guess in the other CAR T therapy, I don't think they were doing a follow-up bone marrow transplant, but these would have been also in that study. Those initial treatments were being done on much older adults.
Right.
So I think the difference there is
kids versus
Probably
adults.
not going to get to the point where it's a disease that needs to be managed if you're already over 50. But if you're 13, they want to do the complete reset.
Yep.
Second teenager cleared their leukemia within a similar time period and is now recovering at home after the transplant. A third child responded to the CAR T cell therapy, but was unable to complete the treatment due to a fungal infection that took their life just as they were lighting the path for others to follow. It's very sad.
It's promising, but it's still it's still one of those things where it's like such a small group
3
of
people.
patients, right?
Yeah.
Because it's people who this is their last chance, and so they're part of this research. Yeah.
So 3 for 3, the treatment was successful. One of the patients unfortunately didn't make it because, again, you're already treating patients who this is the last arrow that wasn't even there yesterday. So they're taking great risk, but they're also at that point when it's time to do so. Okay. So the way they did this is pretty wild. They basically have the ability to do a donor bank that is non-matching. You don't have to worry about rejection. It doesn't have to be based on your own cells and engineered specifically for you. They remove a flag or tag called CD7 that identifies the T cells as T cells. Important step because leukemia is a mutant T cell disease, and the new universal T cells are being designed to destroy these mutants by identifying and attacking them by that CD7. So they remove that thing that they're attacking. And also they would, because they'd be attacking themselves. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, that would be autoimmune, and you don't want that.
Also all T cells. So then, and then there's a couple other, there's another step that they do to make it stealth. So the drugs or treatment that the patient's on doesn't recognize these T cells, so also doesn't try to combat them like the regular therapy regimen would be. But yeah, they're looking to recruit 10 more patients who have exhausted all conventional treatments options in the UK. So that recruitment is underway by the NHS there. If successful team hopes they can be offered to more children and earlier in the treatment journey, when they are less sick, so that they are better positioned to then do the ensuing treatments as well.
Right,
Which
because
also
if they're less sick, then they're less likely to succumb to a fungal infection or any of those other comorbidities that happen.
And to be healthier for a bone transplant and everything else.
Right.
Yeah. But this is all led by Professor Wasim Qasim at University College London, Great Ormond Street Institute for Child Health, who says, "It's nice to be able to see the fruits of a long period of work coming together from multiple teams and being brought into play for new treatments. It's still early and we need more follow-up and to treat more patients to know how it might impact treatments long term."
Yeah. Well, I wish this whole, CAR T has proven successful so many times already, and hopefully it'll continue to be in this case as well. And it looks promising, but 3 patients is very small. So step by step by step by step.
Well, and then the limiting factor between that and stem cells has been, we don't have universal donors, so it's a very complicated, specific, high-cost thing. Yeah. Stem cells, recently, there's a biotech company that's got a universal stem cell, a universal CAR T therapy now.
Yeah.
Now we're starting to talk about treatments designed that can take on the masses of diseases. So things are going to be accelerating. Things are going to be speeding up quite a bit going forward.
Universal. Hopefully it actually works that way. Let's hope. Speaking of things that we want to be good, we've been talking about the fecal transplants for years. Poo pills you take that help treat chronic IBS, Crohn's disease. Doctors have been using them for a while very well. A new study in ACS Central Science has published on a new development, a new strategy that researchers have come up with that they are calling their colonizing probiotics. And their colonizing probiotics involve some microgel spheres that have had particular nanoparticles put into them. So they have sodium alginate, tungsten, and calcium nanoparticles, along with beneficial probiotics, probacteria that are specific to a particular disease. And the researchers have not given this to people yet, but in giving it to mice, what they have shown is that when they give these microgels to mice who have a basic copy of Crohn's disease, or irritable bowel disease, they were able to put these microgels, these microbeads in. The microbeads were first approached by a particular type of microbe that likes to connect with calcium, and so the calcium was extracted, and then as that happened, another aspect with the molybdenum actually gets exchanged in an enzyme in another bacteria that's very deadly and difficult to manage in the gut, so that bacterium in the gut can't do its work anymore, and then the probiotics start coming in and they take over, and the new happy bacteria take over and are able to colonize and get rid of the dangerous Enterobacteriaceae species that are there.
Nice.
So instead of poo pills, people might be a little bit more likely to take these specially crafted cocktails of ions and sodium, calcium, little microgel beads.
You're saying gel beads, which makes me think about what were those in the 90s? The bath beads? Bath beads.
Oh, no, not bath beads. No, not bath beads, but also not bad for you beads.
Colors. Have this heart-shaped microbead.
Right, but it would just go away. It would dissolve away, and then all that would be left is good, happy bacteria, and it would make your gut happy. So the idea is if they can go in specifically and use particular molecules to isolate and reduce the activity of certain dangerous species as they add probiotics, good species, then that can possibly lead to a beneficial result in the gut that can be maintained. So
it seems also like I wish this wasn't part of the conversation, but it sounds more digestible to the general public.
Yeah, exactly.
Than a poo pill, right? So like if you're having them take a gel cap or a medicine that appears to be much more prescription drug-esque, right? It might be more marketable, more easy to push onto individuals who need it.
Yeah.
As opposed to, again, I'm frustrated that this is part of it, but it is part of it.
But they still got to go through some trials and stuff before that's available, right?
Absolutely. This is just on mice. They showed really, really great success rates in mice, and so the next step will be moving it up clinical trials until it can be made available for people. But then, additionally, until then,
Dr. Justin's not a real doctor. Poo pills, technically a supplement and not due to FDA oversight, is on the market. Where we're selling them left and right, folks.
But I think that's the other problem, right? Is that when you talk about poo pills, you're still talking about a donor, which is way harder to regulate than lab-made formulas.
Yes. And that's exactly much easier to say.
Here's the ingredient list. Here's your medication, as opposed to we vetted this donor. Hopefully, it's the same as it was when we vetted it. Here you go.
Well,
The
they
other
have
thing,
to.
too,
They
is
take the
it's-
donor. They have to
Yep.
clean it. Everything has to be.
Of course,
You know,
but
What do you
Yeah.
mean clean it? You can't clean it.
They
That's the
there's
whole
still
point.
it's like
So-
they
pasteurized,
isolate,
which is
right?
They
They
do.
isolate
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
not
no poo in it.
patentable.
Yes.
You can't. Once you get it into a formula, then you can patent it.
Right,
Then you can
yes.
invest and sell, and
It's all part of the
drug on
game.
market.
But you know what? If in the end it gets people the
That's
help
what's gonna
that
get
they
'em.
need,
That's where it's gonna get them, all right.
I think, it's work. Sometimes you got to work within the system, and this works within the system way better than poo pills does. So I'm actually optimistic about it.
I know. I want to be optimistic about this as well. And
Somebody
finally,
poured
for
their life savings into Dr. Justin's not a real Dr. Poo Pills. I beg to disagree, but what is
not a
that?
poo pill, but a cute little Tasmanian devil. Tasmanian devils have been succumbing over the recent years, past couple of decades that we know of, most highly to facial tumors that are caused by a virus. And there's been question about how the Tasmanian devils are going to survive and how we can create conservation programs and protect them from the facial tumors. And there's all sorts of work has been going on. But a paper recently published by Rodrigo Hamide and his team members on the evolution of these facial tumors with the Tasmanian devil populations in a specific location in New Zealand, they were able to show that it is evolving to live with the devils. So the virus that's causing the cancer is becoming less deadly. So they still
That's
get the
a
facial
better
tumors.
parasite.
Right,
Very
better
good.
Don't kill your host. So it's still not great. It weakens the host for sure. There's still a tumor being formed. And there's a question, of course, of the Tasmanian devil's immune system and how the immune system of the Tasmanian devils has been evolving to deal with this virus, in addition to how the virus has been evolving. But it has been a synchrony of these, meshing gears, right? Where the immune system and the virus have been co-evolving for a very long time, many generations now. And it is turning out that fewer Tasmanian devils are dying from the tumors, and that this may be an instance of a successful co-evolution of a virus.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Good
The
job,
devil's-
facial tumor disease.
Yay! Nice, good for
Yeah.
you. Poor little Tasmanian devils. They're not so cute when they get those facial tumors.
No. Hopefully it's happened with enough in a short enough amount of time that there's not a giant genetic bottleneck now for the Tasmanian devils.
Right.
So
Yeah.
hopefully there's still enough that they functionally will be fine.
That the devils will make it out okay. They will. I'm voting for the Tassies because they're super cute and they need to make it.
Don't pet one though.
Don't pet a Tasmanian devil. Don't do it. I mean, why would you pet a cute thing with a name like that? It's cute, but don't pet it. All right. This is This Week in Science. Thank you so much for joining us for this first part of our show tonight. We are so glad to have you here. We hope that next time you bring a friend. That's right. Tell a friend about TWIS today. If you enjoy the show, don't be shy. Share it with others. Also, if you enjoy this show coming every week, week after week, make sure that you help us out on Patreon. Head over to twis.org, click on the Patreon link, and choose your level of support over on Patreon. $10 a month and more, and we will thank you by name at the end of the show. $15 a month and more, and you'll get stickers. You get a sticker every 3 months, a different one. Most of them are Blair's art, which is pretty cool. Yeah, you didn't know that, did you?
No, I want some stickers.
Blair art stickers are out there. All right. Okay. Let's come on back for more This Week in Science. Specifically, it's that time in the show for Blair's Animal Corner with Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. You want to hear about animals? She's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
got, Blair?
I have Les Ribbit. Les Ribbit.
Ribbit.
Did you know that frogs have accents?
Nope.
So they do. I mean, accents is a very generous way of saying it, but they have differences in ways that they call, and it was previously assumed that it was regional, just like an accent, right? But there is some new data on this issue. So this is a piece of research coming University of New South Wales in Australia, where there's lots of frogs. And they use data collected by citizen scientists through the Frog ID project to analyze the calls of around 700 frogs. Thousands of calls, but around 700 individuals. How do you know? By the call. The calls are so specific that you can identify an individual by their call. And so the variation was often thought to have to do with habitat structure or geographic location. And it does not appear to be that way. There's something else going on. And instead, according to this research, they found that frog calls are influenced by the interplay between environmental factors, which is different from just saying their habitat. Noise from other animals, anthropogenic noise like wind and water. There's lots of other factors that go into it because ultimately, at the end of the day, frogs depend almost entirely on acoustic communication with each other. So they have to be heard. That is their number one goal. Doesn't matter if they're seen, only matters if they're heard. And so they need to make sure that their call can cut through all the other sounds in their environment. And so this is called the acoustic adaptation hypothesis, which means that their vocalizations adapt to conditions to optimize transition throughout space. And so the surrounding environment does play a role, but these other factors also do. Who's also calling? How many crickets are calling at the time? Are they near a man-made fountain that's causing some sort of distracting sound? And so all of that does play into it. They were looking at banjo frogs, which are a widely distributed type of frog throughout Australia. There's 4 species that they looked at. They're found in a wide range of habitats. They were able to map these calls against canopy cover and other factors that they knew about their environment. So basically they were like, is this just related to your environment or is this related to these other factors as well? And so they were able to kind of rule out that canopy cover alone was what was changing their calls. And so what this tells us is that when you are kind of mapping out an environment for a frog, it's way more than what's actually happening in their environment in terms of whether they have trees or not, or how big the trees are. It's about all these other things going on. That also means that if something changes suddenly, then frogs have to find a way to keep up. If you suddenly have a new soundscape, I guess, in a frog environment, the frogs have to figure out how to compete with that. And so their next area of research is to look at different species to see if this is consistent across frog species or if there's only certain species of frogs that do this. But I think it's very cool, kind of just at the baseline, to recognize that they're not just adapting to their physical environment, they're adapting to their audio environment, they're adapting to their biotic environment, they're adapting to all these different bits because sound is so important to them.
I find that so interesting because it takes into account, it's like being at a concert and shifting your voice a little bit lower or a little bit higher pitched so that your friends can hear you when you shout at them over the sound of the crowd, or being in a different environment and whispering or changing the way that you talk. Or maybe you head over to, I don't know, Fargo, North Dakota, and decide you're going to start talking like you belong in North Dakota because they have large open plains. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
sure.
Sure.
Is that why everyone in New York is yelling all the time? All the traffic noise? There you go.
Could be, but yeah, I think it's interesting that it's not that the call is not just the individual species. It is a function of the aspects of the ecology, the habitat, all the things that go into making the individuals in that species more able to survive.
Yeah. And I would also, beyond just kind of looking at different species, I would be very interested to find out, if I was a frog researcher, how plastic this was, right? So like,
Right.
if I take a frog from one soundscape and plop him into a new soundscape, can he adapt? Can he
Right.
change the way that he calls? Or is this something that's built in? Once you reach an adult frog age, you're like, this is it. This is my call. This is my calling card. Set in stone. Can't change it. I'm very curious.
My guess
I'd
is
love
that
to
they would
know.
be able to, because the thing that this reminds me of is
Guess.
penguins.
Penguins.
Well, so
Penguins with
birds,
the
birds
sea
and
of
frogs
penguins
are very
can-
different, and the way that they use their calls is very different. So this is like,
But
it's tough to draw a parallel.
finding each other through calls, through a sea of other penguins. You know, the need to be able to isolate your voice from the rest of them seems like it'd be important. But maybe
Right, but my point is, frogs don't normally traverse extremely far from one place to another. They're usually pretty local. They grow up in a specific pond as a tadpole. They are able to leave the pond, but then they're not going too far. So if you are learning your frog calls as a froglet, and that is the environment that you are born in, if I pluck you and drive you 100 miles and plop you in a different soundscape, I'm not sure that's something that evolutionarily they have been handed the tools to change. But that's what I would want to know.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. Does the accent affect how it's able to survive in a different soundscape, or the way that it's able to even behave in a different soundscape? Does it change its accent to fit in?
Yeah,
I
is
guess
it
would
like
be
your
the big
friend from
question.
college that studied
Right.
abroad and came back with a British accent, and you're like, stop it.
What are you doing?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
okay.
stop it.
It's mid-Atlantic, darling. Come on.
Next, I have a story about rats.
Oh, rats.
Rats. Oh, rats. And rat pheromones. So rats, they're super smart. They're pretty social. They really seem to cue into one another. I love stories about rats and their interactions with one another. Well, this one from University of Tokyo is looking at their ability to calm each other down with pheromones. So previously, it's been known that calm rats can reduce fear in nearby rats, but the mechanism was unknown. Without touching, they could be in completely separate cages, but a calm rat could calm a stressed rat without touching them. So in this study, University of Tokyo found the pheromone responsible. It's a big surprise, it's a pheromone. And they wanted to see how it worked and see if they could use it for their own reasons, which we'll get to later. So essentially, they can calm each other down without direct interaction due to these pheromones, which travel in the air. They're released from a relaxed rat. They're received by the scared rat. It calms them down. It alters their state. So they wanted to find the pheromone and isolate it and see if they could use it for things. And they couldn't just grab a rat because that would stress them out. Then they wouldn't be releasing the calm pheromone. And see, it's really tough. So instead, they put a calm rat to sleep, just a nap, not like put
it to sleep.
Right? Yes,
just take a nap.
Take a nap, and they used water to absorb the pheromones from the back of their neck.
What?
They were able to find the pheromone, which is 2-methylbutyric acid, or 2-MB, which is also found in the aromas of cheese and wine. So
I was going to say that I've heard.
Well,
this
that
sounds
makes
familiar.
A lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
Calming.
So
Here we go.
If we and rats have anything in common, the cheese and the wine may calm us, which I certainly can relate to. Well, so they found this 2MB, and they wanted to make sure it was what was doing it. So then, to kind of reverse engineer, they had 2 identical chambers. They laced one with 2MB. Rats showed a preference for that. They also just did some basic monitoring and found that being exposed to 2MB did calm them down. So this
So it
directly
didn't have
showed,
to be another rat. It could just be the molecule.
Right. Yeah, it's just the molecule. So it
Oh,
showed that it worked, but this also showed because they had the kind of preference for the area that was laced with 2MB. That means the rats felt comfortable sniffing it. So then they wanted to use it in urban environments with wild rats, and they tested it at 2 different locations. And they found that when rats were treated with 2MB, they reduced their fear of novel things, or neophobia. So they were just kind of chill. They're like, oh, hey, what's that? And here's the part where I think this study takes an interesting turn. They think this is a great use of this 2MB because if you can reduce neophobia, they'll be easier to trap.
Yep, you can get them to come and eat something that might be poisoned, or get them in a trap and trap them up there.
And so, of course, they're saying, oh, this would be great for humane pest control. You can lure urban rats into non-lethal traps and also keep them calm while you transport them out of the urban environment. Come on, we know what you're doing. There's no way.
Well, yeah, I know exactly. I can see through it. This is going to be sold to restaurateurs who have competition down the street.
From the other rat
best way to get rid of the competition is you put a bunch of this MB2 all around the front of the restaurant, and then people go out dining and they see all these rats hanging out in front of a restaurant, and they go, oh, we're going to keep walking, and they come to your place instead.
What would you do? You spray it on your head, and then you can have a rat chef on your head, under your hat.
Totally calm.
Okay, so
yep.
Here are the 2 very obvious uses of this pheromone that I thought of immediately while I was reading the story, and I thought that's what they were going to be talking about. Number 1, most importantly, in my opinion, calm laboratory rats.
Right? Doing experiments where you don't have stressed out rats.
What?
But
very helpful.
But that would then...
removing cortisol as a...
Is that a special condition compared to all the other research we've done? Is it a better condition?
So it depends. If it's something where a stress hormone could interfere, then absolutely it could be helpful. If you're trying to test the result, the kind of emotional well-being based on another variable, you don't want to confound it, right? But it's just like that whole thing that we talked about where like mice are cold in the lab, and so that's been messing up experiments. If rats are stressed, this is the other thing, is pretty recently we talked about in a story about giving enrichment to laboratory mice and rats and how that can help have a positive impact on their well-being and help keep them calm, and they perform better in behavioral tests, and there's less confounding variables there. So if you want to reduce stress hormones, this is here for you. But then, of course, the other thing I thought of was humans. You know, if we could figure out how this is related to us, if there's somebody with an anxiety disorder or PTSD or any number of stress-related behavior issues, this could help with that, right? So obviously, does that mean rats very far away, but
so is your experiment then have people with one of these anxiety disorders perform a stressful task, see how they perform, have another group with the same disorder, or maybe the same individuals, perform a different stressful task after smelling cheese and maybe a small glass of wine.
That's right.
Maybe.
Yes.
I mean, I feel like that could be done.
I feel like it's going to be wafted into the air at like casinos. I don't know.
Oh, I was thinking spas, but perhaps a
right.
casino. Although I think in a casino you want people stressed out, right? Because you want them acting on impulse to spend more
Not
money.
so
If you're nice
relaxed,
and
yeah.
calm, if you're just like, oh, I lost $50, no big deal. I'm gonna go. Like, just I don't know. It might be
I don't know. I feel
counterproductive.
like they bring around the free drinks for a
You
reason.
walked it in places where people could get stressed out. So like
Yeah.
enclosed subway tunnels where you have to
Yeah.
walk between trains and there's lots of people.
Dentist's office.
Right. This is fascinating.
Yes.
Synthetic
So anyway, but
UMB. Yeah. Okay,
but
rat.
they're gonna use it to trap rats, so whatever. But I do think it's an interesting result
Humane.
that could lead to other things besides just trapping rats.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as a pheromone, as a smell compound, that's fascinating. I find that, yeah.
I'm ode to calm.
Oh.
Just everywhere I go, just wafting calm energy on people. I'd be very interested in that, actually.
I guess
So
it
let's-
depends on the cheese smell that the wafting
Yeah.
is.
It depends. But
There's
to,
some cheeses that can be a little tough to waft.
we can go the opposite
to
direction
whiff near a wafter.
from calm Blair. Let's talk about snakes and
Oh, sure. I mean, I still am calm because I love snakes, but you go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead and continue
Snakes in
the
the
animal corner
ground.
here just a little bit longer. Why snakes? Chromosome level assembly of 14 snakes, and a study led by the Chinese Academy of Sciences has created a pretty high resolution genomic reference for the study of snake evolution. They used the long forms. They used PacBio and Oxford Nanopore technology to get really, really long reads to do the whole genome of 14 snakes that were from 12 different snake families. The team also then went back over using BGI and Illumina platform sequencers to obtain higher resolutions of shorter reads. And they also did the assembled chromosome using Hi-C. So what all that means is they really spent time to get the detailed version of these snakes' genomes. They analyzed the data collected along with previously sequenced genomes of snakes, lizards, turtle, a crocodile, a bird, a mouse, trying to get a picture of snake evolution from the various traits that have been lost with the genes that are lost, and additions of genes, and maybe trait differences there. Based on the estimated divergence times, they think snakes originated early Cretaceous, around 118 million years ago, and then underwent a rapid diversification around 65 million years ago. Which, hey, that's also when we were talking before. That's when the
KT boundary. Interesting.
Yeah, that's when everything almost went extinct.
Yeah, fascinating.
So that kind of really makes sense because after that period of time, so many niches open up, right? You've got so many missing critters on the planet. Everything is now sort of open to go and exploit and find new niches. So there was a lot of evolution taking place there. The signature traits of a snake, long legless body, were consistent with snake-specific gene deletions observed in the newly sequenced snake genomes. The elongated body also forces snakes to have weird internal organs.
True.
Yeah, they basically only have one lung.
Yeah.
So the other lung is either gone, or it's like a residual.
Yeah.
Or it works, but it's
Looks
really
like a little
small.
jelly bean.
And it has to be next to the tube that will be filled with food at some point after it eats.
And
they won't be able to
and
breathe.
they did find that the gene that is usually sort of in charge of the symmetry of lung development, that was missing.
There you go.
Changes in the visual system. They showed snakes have lost several photoreceptor-related coding genes. The expression of 15 photoreceptor cell-related genes was significantly upregulated. So the author suggests that what this indicates is that the snakes underwent an early prolonged low-light period, likely as a burrowing creature. where it lost a lot of its ability to see, and then came back to the surface and had to adapt with the genes it already had by upregulating them to regain its vision.
I wonder if that's when they lost their
Fascinating.
eyelids also.
Yeah. Because they wouldn't need them necessarily. They're not, if they're in the dark.
So, yeah. So then, 3 lineages of snakes, pit vipers, pythons, and boas, all possess something specialized. Blair probably already knows what it is.
Well, there's a couple things. Do you mean their heat-sensing organs on their face?
Yes, they have temperature-sensitive infrared sensing organs.
Yep.
Now, analysis revealed a convergent repurposing of what were non-coding genes around active genes that have a cellular response to heat. So it looks like it was a co-option, and I don't have it here, but it's 2 of them were like kind of did it the same way, and the third one did it slightly differently. So it looks like a convergent evolution. Like this took place separately. This isn't a shared ancestor of the 3 that developed this, but they kind of got it in 2 different tracks. And then observations of genes regulating hearing suggests that gene loss is connected to the snake's lack of hearing range and some sound perception, which at the same time, the evolution of additional gene regulators that could relate to inner ear specialization and low frequency hearing, which again would sort of is something you would commonly see in burrowing animals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's cool. So they were burrowing. They were at one point underground. They diversified, and then they came back up on the ground. And so this is like genetic sleuthing to follow this whole track of snake evolution.
Well, a lot of them are still underground.
Yeah.
Not all of them came back up.
True.
And a lot of them will be above ground, but will breed underground, or they don't hibernate. What do they do? They go to those big mating ball pits. What is it? Like rattlesnakes go back to the same location every year.
Right. I don't know what it's called, but they do have those reproductive areas.
Yes. Well, and some of them do hibernate. And then they'll also go through various types of kind of like reduced metabolic activity too. So they won't fully hibernate, but they might not eat for 3 months.
Yeah.
Just chill out.
Chill out, man. We're snakes. I think it's cool to be able to. I just love the fact that we can take all this information now and potentially be able to figure out how things evolved. So neat. Where they
I mean, snakes, pretty successful evolutionary strategy.
Long neck, long days.
Long neck, but very bendy, not super fused, right? So they can still curl up and protect themselves. Plus, very pointy.
Very pointy. Sharp fangs. Bitey, pointy.
My last story for the day.
You have another story? Awesome.
Last one. Okay. Research led by Université de Tours in France has dated sediments in a cave with optically stimulated luminescence dating. They determined that the cave was sealed off by infilling sediment around 57,000 years ago. Why that's important is because that's well before current modern humans were in the area, and in this cave are Mousterian tools, a technology associated with Neanderthals.
Oh,
so
cool.
We have Neanderthal tools in a cave that's been sealed at around 57,000 years ago. On the walls of the cave, there are engravings that, through a simple process of elimination, could only have been made by Neanderthals. While the cave was sealed off around 57,000 years ago, the engravings more likely around 75,000 years old, which would make them the oldest cave art in Europe by about 10,000 years over the nearest contender in Spain, cave art that's a little bit more advanced, but also thought to be made by Neanderthals. These are Non-figurative symbols, these are carvings of sort of patterns. They are a similar age to cave engravings made by current modern humans in other parts of the world. And this was we talked, I guess it was last week, about the Homo naledi find at the was it Rising Star Cave? And I described it as cross-hatching. They were seeing some cross-hatching that looked like it was intentional.
Yeah.
They are ridiculously underselling everything and trying not to make big announcements.
Right.
The Homo naledi stuff is design patterns. It is not just simple cross-hatching. There is cross-hatching going on, but there's symbols in that one. So, yeah. And there was a tool found in the hands of it. Like, there's like so much from the naledi. Anyway, so they don't know what this is exactly in terms of what the meaning is, but the evidence is starting to grow now. We've got shared use of fire and cave art, manufacturing of materials and tools, now in Neanderthals, naledi, current modern humans.
And it keeps going back.
Well, so exactly. And there's likely to for a lot of this, there's probably a language aspect that's going to be going along with all of this. So it could be convergent. Some aspect of shared advancements could be convergent. They both came up with, let's do cave art and engraving. They both came up with how to control fire separately. But as we keep adding more, the likeliness is increasing that there is a highly intelligent predecessor to current modern humans and Neanderthals, maybe even Homo naledi, that likely already was doing this, and we just haven't found it because it's extremely old. We're talking now it's 800,000 years or more.
Right, and any kind of forces that would disrupt the caves or any surfaces, 800,000 years is a long time for a space not to be disturbed, for soil not to be disturbed enough that you could actually be able to make out any kind of markings.
Yeah, and they'd have to be caves. And that's the thing, crazy thing with the naledi find too, is because it's such a sealed underground, undisturbed area, they're having a hard time dating it. Like a lot of other places, you get infill, you get stalactites coming down, you can do trace uranium leaching through the walls on the cave art or something like this to sort of get a half-life of how long it's been there. Naledi doesn't have a lot of that stuff. So it could be much, much older. But all these things are sort of pointing to this earlier hominid that was probably using fire, making engravings, which is probably one of our tool users. We know there were tool users before. That's fine. That's a million-year-old practice. The Homo erectus is a likely candidate right there for a much more intelligent than we're currently giving them credit for. And they kind of traversed the world before current modern humans and
for a very long time.
Neanderthal. Yeah.
For a really long time.
Yeah. And they may have been more advanced than we're currently giving them credit for. So never mind trying to get the Neanderthals, respect for intelligence. I think they're there. There's enough evidence there. Now we got to go back further because it's not likely that they came up with everything so separately. 400,000 to 800,000 years of separation from current modern humans and came up with all the same ideas. It just doesn't quite track.
Right. Or that there was some common source. And is it through learning? Is it just where does that come from though? When you're talking about it, how does that even happen in different species, let alone, of course and we can talk about individual populations with skills that are learned across time, but then is that indicating this learning that happens between individuals within populations as speciation is taking place, right?
And
that ends up making its way to these new populations in different places, hundreds of thousands of years apart.
And you got to figure that there was language communication, but it wouldn't be like we kind of think of it today.
Yeah.
Like we don't have a 20,000-year-old language.
Yeah.
That we know right? We don't have any idea how long, just that long ago. But for millions of years, there were tools that were made in the same fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So that language, whatever they were using to communicate that, might change every 100 years so that, it could just continually be evolving with the new group so that it's not a set language over time. And it wouldn't matter because you're mostly just needing to communicate to those around you anyhow. But it looks like it must have been there. For all of these fire making, tool making, symbol making things.
The symbol making is the really fascinating one because that really indicates abstract thought. And that indicates a higher level of awareness of the environment and their place in it. And it's, it makes it mean a lot more. So cool old wall scratchings. Someday we'll be wondering, where did the human scratchings go? Oh, AI took them away. Speaking of AI, what a wonderful transition. Researchers have just published their study accurately predicting hit songs using neurophysiology and machine learning in the Frontiers in Artificial Intelligence journal. So in this study, what they did is they did using off-the-shelf brainwave monitoring technology. They were able to sense kind of the feelings and like brainwaves, the emotional responses, the activation of the brain in response to listening to a bunch of songs. And so they had a number of volunteers for their study that they had self-report how they were feeling, and then they played them 24 songs for the study, and they recorded how the brain actually responded, and they put all that data from the neurophysiology, from the self-reports of mood and emotion, from these 33 participants, volunteers, into a statistical model. And first, it was just a linear statistical analysis, and from the logistic regression, this linear logistic regression, they were able to determine the potential for a song to be a hit song about 67% of the time, 69% of the time. But then when they said, let's add machine learning to the mix, the machine learning model increased that to 97% accuracy. They were able to put the brain activation together with a song being a hit 97% of the time. And so the researchers now are saying that what this means that they could be able to do it. This is a model for market research. And that sometime in the future, everybody will just listen to the best songs because we will have all the brain recordings, and all the brain recordings are going to tell everybody what the hits are going to be. And then we're only going to listen to the hit songs because that's all that will be made.
No,
that's not exactly what they said, but it's kind of.
I don't like that.
No.
Hit songs are not necessarily good songs, first of all.
Right.
So I believe that they could predict what a hit song was because there are certain formulas that make things catchy and playable and replayable. Yeah. But that's not the same as good music. Sometimes those overlap, not always.
Yeah.
And there's music that is really good, but is not a hit.
But not hits, right?
Yeah.
Really great music is very often not hit-making music.
My favorite artist. You do not hear on the radio. And there's a reason for that. People don't generally want to listen to Tom Waits while they're driving to work in the morning. I
These
do.
diamonds on my windshield is tears from heaven.
I do,
What's
but
he
most
doing in
people
there?
don't. And if AI means there's no
Rolling
more
down
Tom
the
Waits
interstate, I
music,
got a
I'm gonna
steel
be very
train
that'll make
and
me
the
mad at
wind bites
AI
my cheek.
Forever.
before
Forever,
anything
ever.
else.
Forever, ever.
and
So
all these other
That's fine.
things.
Always.
Don't
makes me
take
sick.
my weird music away, please.
what I find interesting, what they say, the conclusion that the researcher says, our key contribution is the methodology. It's likely this approach can be used to predict hits for many other kinds of entertainment too, including movies and TV shows. But what they also say here is that based on their responses with the number of hits that were identified, this means that streaming services can readily identify new songs that are likely to be hits for people's playlists more efficiently, making the streaming services' jobs easier and delighting listeners. So effectively making streaming services better moneymakers and more boring to listen to for the user. I don't think it'll delight listeners.
I think that what's going to happen. I just saw the future. I just got a glimpse into the future. AI is going to finally do what they were working on in the 50s, which is come up with a 5-second jingle that cannot be removed from your brain.
Oh,
And
like the
it's
ultimate
going to
earworm.
discover it, and it'll play it a couple of times, and then nobody will be able to get it out of their head, and
be
it will be the
tinnitus.
end of humanity.
Oh no!
Right there. 5-second jingle, but the ultimate can't be released from a human brain. Synchronized perfectly to all of us.
Are you writing episodes for Black Mirror now? This seems like something that should be a Black Mirror episode. The researcher also says if in the future wearable neuroscience technologies like the one we used for the study become commonplace, the right entertainment could be sent to audiences based on their neurophysiology. Instead of being offered hundreds of choices, they might just be given 2 or 3, making it easier and faster for them to choose music that they will enjoy.
I don't want that either.
I don't.
but
But how many times have you come across really neat stuff because you've been searching for something that you didn't know you needed?
Listening to music that I never would have picked out for myself that someone else hands me is a joy.
It is. Yes. So I don't know. I don't know if we are on the outside of the data set here, but to me, it seems like making my life easier is not something in this case that would make me happier. I
agree. I think
right.
radio hits have a place.
For sure.
Like I will sing along to a radio hit with everyone else in the car.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily what I'm going to curate for myself.
Well, I think what's clear is whoever said that or wrote that or whoever this researcher is, whoever, whatever, doesn't understand how music works.
Yeah.
But everything else is probably
everything
true.
else is fine.
I think they need to hand this research over, walk over to the music majors at the university and talk to them because they will have some things to say about this.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really what this comes down to is neuroscience being used for what's called neuroforecasting, which is being used is a technique that's been kind of in its infancy, being used off and on for the last decade or two, trying to determine what should the end of a movie be? What makes people happy? What makes them sad? What is going to be a hit song? How should we create this media to get this content, this form of media to get the best response, which will lead to lifelong fans, which will, so it's marketing. It's basically marketing. And so it's like, this is all part of a money-making scheme, not a really making people happy with music and artistry and creativity and enjoyment of that scheme. So it's a very different, it's very different place to be.
Yeah, but humans get so bored with formulas so quickly.
Right?
Do you know? I don't think that they do. I think there's certain humans, and you're one of them, which is why I like you. And Kiki's another one, which is also why. Certain humans who don't necessarily want the formula over and over and over and over and over and over again. But I'm telling you, if you've ever paid attention to movies, TV, and music, There's a lot of formula that's getting regurgitated and digested by a large percentage of humanity over and over and over again.
So I find this really interesting, which is the kind of lumpification of populations. It's like, this is a hit. This is great. We're going to put everyone together into this one bucket. We're going to do, everyone responds this way. This makes people happy. This is it. But not everybody is the same. There are individuals within populations, right? And so my last study that was published in the Journal of Neurophysiology, it kind of relates to this in that the researchers were looking at pain and how brains respond to pain, and they shot people's hands with painful lasers and then looked at their brains to see how their brains responded. And they looked at a specific kind of brain response called gamma waves, and the gamma frequency of waves has kind of not been well discerned in pain research historically. And according to the researchers, in fact, has kind of like differences between individuals in these gamma waves have been thrown out as noise, and instead of actually investigating them as individual differences. And these researchers are saying that these gamma oscillations, the oscillations in the gamma waves that take place, could be used as like individual fingerprints. That in their study, what they saw is that individuals within the group, some individuals didn't respond with any gamma waves oscillations whatsoever in response to the painful stimulus. But some people in the first part of the study, they had the same brain oscillations as in the second part of the study with a second painful stimulus. And so what this means is that the gamma oscillations of those individuals, people who have them, who don't, this can be a fingerprint for pain that should be looked into, that some people have a consistent response to pain that has been thrown out with the trash historically because it's noisy. It's too difficult to look at. I don't want to look at that data. That's not the data we're looking at.
Do they think this is related to how they experience pain? Like how it...
So that's what they were asking, and it's not necessarily related to whether or not they experience the pain, but it could be related to the how, but they didn't get people to say how painful the stimulus was and like really dig into the details on that. But the people who didn't have gamma oscillations, they did feel the painful stimulus. They did say that hurts. So
interesting. It's because I also wonder if this has anything to do with the fact that like redheads require more painkillers,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
Wait, is that like a real thing?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting that, this, like historically, a lot of stuff that causes noise in the data has been thrown out. We're not looking at that data. It has been women in research historically, but now we're looking at all sorts of different signals. And this, interestingly, is individual response to painful stimuli, that the brain and touch related response can be measurable and the same within individuals across painful experiences. So
I can relate to that a little bit. I have a high pain threshold. It doesn't bother me at all. But I can't hold a cup of coffee even with just one of those little cardboard sleeves on it because it's too hot for my hand. I have the tips of my fingers, just the heat from a coffee, like a take-to-go coffee cup, way too hot. I can't even hold it.
Right. I can usually hold a coffee cup, but if I just barely stub my toe, oh my gosh, I'm yelling, I'm screaming, I'm hopping, I am in so much pain. My toes, very painful. My hands, whatever. It's great. Yeah.
Maybe it's just different parts of that. I don't know.
I don't know, but
that's the question. Does this impact how a person experiences pain? And then specifically, does this impact how pain can be treated in individuals? Because if you could come up with a pain fingerprint and from that create a pain management strategy that is tailored to an individual, that would be excellent.
Right. And so that's kind of where they're looking, in that what they're measuring currently and the way that they are assessing pain currently does not fully encompass the way that our brain, that the individual's brain and not just the population's brain, deals with, interprets, perceives pain, and acts on it. And so this is something that could potentially be, a subset, a subsample could lead to individual treatments. And yes,
I love
that's
that.
exactly
You just
what
show
they're
up
getting
for anything at the doctor's office and they open up your chart and they go, oh, I see from your pain fingerprint that we are going to administer this drug to you in this amount, in this way.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, love it.
Yeah. But first we had to figure out that, okay, now we know maybe people do have pain fingerprints. So this is a new direction to look. How do we identify completely those fingerprints? How do we associate those with the complexity of perception of pain? And then how can we lead to treatment? And there are all sorts of, all sorts of things that tie into it. But the fact that, yes, we never thought about that before, even though, yes, Justin, you and I can talk about the fact that we don't perceive pain the same. Why would our brains look the same? Yeah. We're all individuals out here, everyone, making our way, doing our things. Have we done it? Do we make it to the end of the show?
We've done it.
Woohoo!
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Is that it? Is that all the science that was fit to talk about?
Tonight, for sure.
Tonight. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
This
be back
week.
again next week. Woohoo, yeah. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of This Week in Science. I want to say thank you so much to people chatting in the chat room, to my co-hosts, to several individuals who help out to make this show very possible. Fada, thank you so much for your help on social media and your help with the show notes. And Gord and Arnlore for making sure those chat rooms are happy, shining places for people. Identity4, thank you for recording the show. And Rachel, thank you for your editing assistance. And of course, to our Patreon sponsors, I have to say, as always, thank you so much for your support on Patreon. Thank you to Craig Potts, Mary Gertz, Teresa Smith, Richard Badge, Kent Northcote, Rick Loveman, George Corris, Pierre Velazar, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Chris Wozniak, Vegard Shefstad, Hal Snyder, Jonathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, Ali Coffin, Reagan, Don Mundus, P.I.G., Stephen Albaran, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fred S104, Sky Luke, Paul Brunovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack Bryan Carrington, David E. Youngblood, Sean Clarence Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Steve Leesenman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rapin, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Chemi Day, G. Burton Lattimore, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, RDM, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul, Rick Ramus, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Adam Mishkan, Kevin Parachan, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul D. Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Picoraro, and Tony Steele. Thank you all for your support on Patreon. Can't do it without you. And if you are interested in supporting us on Patreon, head over to twist.org and click on that Patreon link. Woo! On next week's show.
We will be back Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific time and again at 5 a.m. Thursday Central European time.
Same time.
Broadcasting live from our YouTube and Facebook channels. And from twist.org/live.
That's right. Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? Perhaps while you test your pain threshold. Just search for This Week in Science where podcasts are found. You know, podcasts can be a painkiller. If you enjoyed the show, get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to stories will be available on our website, www.twist.org, where you can also sign up for a newsletter.
You can also contact us directly. Email Kiki at Kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twist.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be translated into ribbits so quiet that we won't be able to hear them in relation to the environmental noise around us.
Yeah, and if you're still on Twitter, ask yourself why. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, a haiku that comes due in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week. We hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember...
Ribbit, ribbit. It's all in your head.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views. But I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just get understood.
You might understand it's the after show. Will you? Yes, you will. It's the after show, everyone. Thank you for being here for a great episode. We did it. We made it through. Blair, you're not frozen. Okay. Justin just went away. You're not frozen. It's all
No.
good. Okay, good.
I'm just slowly decaying.
Keeping Blair up late at night. Late.
Keeping me awake at any time is difficult now.
Oh, I bet. Your body's like, okay, it's the final stretch. Let's get this. Let's just get this done.
Also, no sleep for you.
Yeah, no sleep for you. No.
Oh. You wanna
No.
get some sleep?
No, never
Can't
mind.
do it.
No
No.
sleeping.
Not on the menu.
Who needs sleep? You don't need it. Nobody needs to sleep. It's that time.
You want to be comfortable laying down?
No. No. Comfort? What is that?
You want to
are
go
done
more
with
than
that.
30 minutes without having to pee? No. Can't do it. For you, can't do it. Sorry.
All the good times are being had. Woo. How's it going over there? You got some good hair going on,
This
Justin.
is the humidity. This is the thing. That's what I'm talking about. This humidity thing is nonsense.
Yeah, just I didn't know you had a cat.
Need to get rid of this humidity immediately. They need to forget the giant windmills or wind turbines that they're putting out in there in the sea there, the North Sea. What they need is dehumidifiers. Huge humidifiers to get rid
Where's
of
that
all
water
this.
going to
man.
go when it's
Well, maybe we
They'll
could
get-
take the water. We'll put it in
Actually,
the
they'll use it for
underground.
farming. You know, it's insane. Denmark farms rely on rain
What?
Oh, it.
because it rains
I
so
thought you
much.
were going to say mist nets, which is also fun.
No, it just rains here a lot.
In the Central Valley in California,
don't
they
have
could totally use
irrigation.
dew collection and mist nets, but no.
In the
Nope.
Central Valley, they when it
testing it there,
rains, they're
though.
like,
They have
oh,
been.
that's a little less water. I could pull, but I gotta take it anyway because then my allotment shrinks. So there's a whole political thing
Yeah.
with water usage in
whole
California. but
political
yeah.
thing. Western United States water use is a whole barrel of snakes.
Well, and don't even
You
get
don't
started on the
care.
whole food waste piece where we make way more food than we
than we
actually use.
need, and yeah.
Anyway,
No. Oh,
'cause it's
people.
ugly or
Okay,
something.
just want to put it out there, people. We're doing it wrong. Right now, the world, I don't know, a lot of people in the US are focused on the rescue operations for a doomed submarine mission
It's
to the
not
Titanic.
doomed. It's not doomed. It could still be saved. There's plenty of time. They got like a day now.
There's
No.
only a couple hours left.
I
No,
thought they were out.
There's a couple of days.
No,
Uh-uh.
no,
They have-
No, as
no.
of this morning, they had less than 24 hours of oxygen.
Yeah.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Oh,
Ooh.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So
Well,
we-
and of course, I saw people posting about like kind of bothered about the millions of dollars going to find these billionaires when there was a capsized boat with refugees that just they were all allowed to drown.
Nobody did anything about it. And that actually is a conversation taking place within Pakistan, because that was a boat of Pakistani refugees. And so we have the Pakistani well-to-do and the unable to do who are fleeing the country and dying, but for very different reasons. But the whole thing is this: the ocean adventures, whatever the little submarine that unfortunately didn't probably is. I mean, I don't know. I very few hopes that they're gonna find it, but
they heard ocean noise this morning and started doing ROV operations in that direction. So
yeah,
we could wake up tomorrow to find that they were found, but
you could, and that would be the amazing rescue story. Yeah. But at the same time, what we've done in this whole situation is we have celebrated the innovation and the CEO of the company, who was in charge of the company, who was saying get rid of regulations because they stifle innovation, and money being spent for this kind of adventure tourism. And we have so much going on the planet where if we spent 5 minutes focused on getting a lot of stuff done that was important related to health and climate and food, we would do a lot. And if all those people who are just getting interested in the money involved in venture capital and Silicon Valley and all that other stuff, if they took 5 minutes and just did the good thing instead of the thing that can make them money, there are problems that could be solved. Mm-hmm. And instead there's so much just, yes, let's have innovation, let's have creativity, let's have adventure, but let's do things better, people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's exactly it. It doesn't have to be instead of, even. It can be
but do it better.
Yeah. I don't know.
Don't cut corners.
And as Sunny says in the YouTube chat room, on your next sub, use a wired gamepad. So I'm sure you heard that they're using what is basically a Logitech aftermarket PlayStation controller to control the submarine. So,
but this is a conversation that has this is something. Game controllers are being used across the military and across these innovative craft across the board. So game controllers are easy to implement. They've already got basically hardware and that people have already been trained on because they're playing games.
Right.
So they're easy to use and they're very accurate controllers, because when you're playing POV first person shooters or something, you got to be fast, you got to be accurate. And so if you're using a controller, you want it to be exactly where you want it to go. You can't have a lot of error in it. So
my question is just
really not the issue. It's the corners that were cut in the structural aspects of the craft and the communications aspects of the craft as a whole, and in the worst case scenario aspects that they didn't ever plan out. What are you going to do if something goes wrong? Oh, well, the craft will just go up.
So
what if you're under something?
It's a depth below where what is it, sperm whales or something. Here you go, right? It's like an insane deep 3,500 meters is the bottom. This is a very specialty craft, the submarine, that can handle insane pressures like this. So
maybe
how many other craft are there? And are they outfitted with anything that can... how do you even go after a thing that is the specialty thing that can go down that deep?
So that's part of the deal. They're going after it mostly with ROVs, so not with
remote operated
vessels.
Yeah,
yes.
Not manned vessels, right? Okay.
Yeah,
robots, basically.
That are gonna have a camera on it to say, "Oh, we found it."
Found it. Now what?
I don't know.
I can't grab it.
I don't know. I mean, I don't ever wish any single person poorly, and I do hope that there's a good outcome. I just find it very impossible to believe that there will be a good outcome at this point in time. And it's a situation that could have potentially been avoided by more planning and more, prepare for the worst kind of
Well, and
perspectives.
redundancies. So like
Redundancies.
yeah.
Kidding. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main complaint I've heard about the controller is that it's not that they used a controller, it's that they didn't have hardwired redundancies in the controls.
So we don't know that it's a control, but we don't know what the problem is. We don't know
what happened. And I'm confident they will find it eventually.
It was tiny, maybe not.
I think it's gonna. Yeah. I think the only thing that makes sense is that it has imploded, and the reason for that is because if you lose communication, and that's what happened, you can still raise the vessel. You still go home at the end of the day, even though you didn't talk or ping them throughout the day. You still get home.
Yeah, but then they would hopefully find a signal of something in the radar or on the surface of the ocean. They haven't found that yet. So yeah.
Like if the sub has a problem where it stops functioning or steering or whatever, your communications still work. You can ping, you can text up and say what happened. The fact that the communication's gone and the sub didn't return means it's been gone for 3 or 4 days.
Yep.
Yeah. Man, I was reading a Reddit thread where people were talking about all the various things that could possibly have gone wrong or happen. Everybody's speculating wildly, but the idea that if the carbon fiber gave at all, or if the viewing port, which was potentially not rated for those depths, cracked and gave. The second that there's any kind of place for pressure difference to regulate itself, to equal itself out, basically you would have implosion on the scale of those people didn't even know they died, or so they it would happen so fast that the air inside the submersible would catch on fire before the craft, all the water rushed in and everything got smushed. So and so fast that they wouldn't even know it happened. So that in its own sense, that would be better than them being stuck underwater with no diminishing oxygen and possible. I don't know. It's crazy. Yeah, there's so many things. Like the story around this is fascinating. I think there's hubris involved. Possibly.
Well, I want us to remember that this is, they wanted to send some millionaires and some billionaires to go look at the Titanic, right? Mm-hmm. Think about all of the commercial space operations that are currently ramping up.
I know.
And think about all the things that could go wrong there.
I know. I keep waiting for something. I'm just there's yes. Yeah.
Hey guys, there's a reason that we've done this kind of pretty well regulated in the past. So,
I mean, I think exploration is good, and there should be innovation in exploration, but there should always be as much safety as possible. But
right, when capitalism enters the game once again, it kind of changes the formula a little bit. Right.
Well,
when you're doing research for the sake of research, it is a very different process to safety rate things and try to take these risks than when it's because this rich man said he wanted to go.
So there's a way to regulate it through capitalism. And the way to do that is all of the recovery efforts need to be charged to the insurance company that backed it.
What insurance? Do you think there's insurance that covered that?
Yeah. And from whatever insurance for the company. The company must have some form of liability.
However,
insurance.
the United States and
Hang on.
Canadian governments are currently paying for search and rescue operations.
Right.
For this.
Hang on. Of
this
course, they're not
vessel.
going to wait for a check. It's gonna take. But my point is, if you charge the insurance companies, this is the way capitalism is supposed to work. Then the insurance company goes, "Oh, okay. You have a sub company and you want insurance. Here's the list of regulations you need to follow for you to get insurance for you to operate as a company." That's how we tend to do it, and it gets tricky when you have billionaires in charge of things, because they go, "I don't need insurance because I'm super rich, so I would just pay for it at the end, and so I can do it without regulation."
And they were in, it's international waters where the Titanic is. So it's, a question of who's responsible and who's supposed to be taking care of this. And, I think it's great that the United States and Canada are stepping up and getting into the search and rescue, because really they're in international waters without a plan for something like this. Yeah. So, who's really supposed to be helping them right now? It's
and to be honest, those ships are sailing anyway.
Yeah.
They had to send the Coast Guard, and it costs money to send the Coast Guard. Coast Guard's out at sea every day. That's what the Coast Guard does. Yeah. They're already cruising around. They're earning it their keep instead of doing a training mission. So that's it.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I do wonder. There's
by the way, the coast, they don't do 3,500 meters under the ocean. There's not a...
Yeah, and there's a difference between maybe the submarine tours or the submersible tours that go down a couple of 100 feet or meters versus this going down thousands, and the pressure that's involved in that.
Blair went on one. Blair was on one of these things over there in Hawaii.
Yeah, right. Did not go far. We can see the top still.
Yeah. You just don't have to get wet. You don't have to snorkel.
That's a good depth right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you can still...
And there were sunken ships that they sunk strategically so you could cruise around and check out the sunk ships.
On purpose.
Yeah. Well, they were decommissioned boats that had to get kind of dealt with, and so they kind of picked a strategic location and let it sink, and so it's all this like coral habitat now. It's pretty funny, but just do that. Why are you getting in a little pod and going in there?
I don't know. This is definitely going to impact the DIY submarine world and the industry of this adventure submersibling and the underwater exploration world. So I think that in itself is going to be interesting to see how the reverberations of this kind of ping back into how underwater exploration is carried out in the future. Even though this was, wealthy tourism and not a scientific adventure, it's still, where one line starts and the other begins is sometimes very hard to delineate.
I wonder.
Well, luckily it won't impact ROVs at all. So
right.
Good.
I was wondering, like, DIY submarining.
Yep.
Can't have a really great track record. I kind of picture it like DIY airplanes or something. Like some can go up a bit and then, land. That's great. But I feel like there would be more problems than successes.
Yeah. Like the guy that built his own rocket to prove the Earth is flat. That didn't work very well for him.
Yeah. Oh, no, that didn't work out. That was a sad story, too. Yeah. That was sad for different reasons. Oh, human progress is laid upon the pyre of dead bodies.
I mean, evolution is built upon billions upon billions of dead individuals.
Right.
That's how it works.
Exactly. And those that do not try are not the ones who are, pushing the envelopes, the envelope of our abilities. And there are some among us who are more likely to be thrill seekers, risk takers, likely to take adventures like this, and others who really, really are not. And so let none of us cast the first stone, but we can hope that future things are done better. And we can hope that they make it back, even though I think they're out of air. But I don't know. I don't have a timer counting it down, but
I went to look at the live updates from CNN actually, just to see where it's at. It sounds like a few hours ago they heard some clanging underground or under the water, but
underwater.
I don't.
And Debbie Mitchell says there was no insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But I bet there were waivers. Were there waivers? I bet there were waivers. Were there waivers?
So, okay.
Probably waivers.
Thursday morning U.S. time is when the air runs out. So they have a few more hours here.
There hasn't been air since Sunday morning. There hasn't been volume within the confines of the outer shell since Sunday morning.
So on Wednesday, the U.S. Coast Guard widened the search area and rerouted. Let's see, that's not good already. Rerouted some of its equipment to try to pinpoint banging sounds heard during an aerial search in the remote North Atlantic area. It didn't yield any results, but the sonar devices from the aircraft are being analyzed by the U.S. Navy. Meanwhile, a fleet of ships and specialized equipment has been deployed, including a U.S. Navy deep ocean salvage system and Canadian Coast Guard ship John Cabot, which has side-scanning sonar capabilities.
Okay. Chat room, who is my go-to source for everything, says, yes, there's a waiver that supposedly mentions death 3 times. I would, make it clear.
Right, but I mean, this is you can sign a waiver be like, yeah, okay, but I trust you. You say this is going to be fine, and you're coming with me. You own the company, and you're coming with me. You say it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. But that doesn't mean you really understand all the aspects of things that can go wrong with the engineering and what's going to happen there. Do you really understand? Really? But maybe they did. But it doesn't take away the liability of a company to do due diligence in the first place to make sure that everything should be safe.
So an industry leader
takes it all away.
Said that OceanGate expeditions strayed from industry norms by declining a voluntary rigorous safety review of the Titan. There are 10 submarines in the world that can go 12,000 feet and deeper. 10. All of them are certified. Except for this one. Yeah. Court filings revealed OceanGate years ago was confronted with safety concerns about the vessel. Records also show the company faced a series of mechanical problems and inclement weather conditions that forced the cancellation or delays of trips in recent years. Not great.
No.
So...
I wonder if it got into the water clean.
Yeah, it's a great question.
They almost canceled because the weather was so bad. Things are getting knocked around. I don't know how much it takes to ding a submarine that's supposed to go down to 3,500 feet, but I would say any is too much.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many.
The guy that warned him about problems. Yep.
Oh, the CEO's on board currently of OceanGate.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. Well, you keep saying currently. I think in my mind, I've already come to the conclusion.
Well, he's still there.
Well, I decided. I have decided that probably it was going.
But I technically don't think he's inside.
I think that it imploded on the way down. I think it probably hit about
3,000 feet.
3,000 feet. Yeah, probably about that. Oh, yeah, and just went. Yeah. I think that's what happened, and they just haven't found the leftover shell yet. But whatever. Debbie Mitchell, it was a beautiful, clear day. Lost contact after an hour. Yeah. I think something happened.
No insurance.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
hilarious.
Well, but then yeah,
It was a beautiful, clear day
how do
before
you
the
insure
Titanic hit an iceberg,
thrill seekers like that?
right?
Can we stop messing with the Titanic now? Also,
Right. Lay
seems
down.
bad. It seems bad. It's Ocean 2, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of vessels related to the Titanic. So, not great.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, there's a reason diving whales don't go down that far.
well,
Pressure's too
Unless
high.
they're dead, and then all of the bone worms eat them. So,
ooh, but then they're good. That's good food.
Yeah,
That's like
yeah.
good for the environment and it's part of the whole cycle of life and birth, decay.
yes.
Yes, nutrients. And the whales are becoming the essence of the ocean.
I'm very excited, actually, if I may slightly change topics, to
please.
watch almost entirely nature documentaries while I am in a zombie state with a newborn baby. I'm just gonna put like Blue Planet and like Planet Earth and all these things in the background. Just be like,
You're going to watch so many shows that you never thought you would watch. You're going to just suddenly just need a distraction for hours. You're going to sit and
Yeah.
listen to talk
Oh my
radio and
God.
podcasts and
But I'll be so happy for David Attenborough to just tell me about bowerbirds just over and over. Just buddy, just tell me about them. I think it's gonna be great. I'm very excited for the bone worm segment of Blue Planet. I gotta find where that is.
Great. Daddy. I hear
I gotta go.
Felix
Hey,
says, Daddy.
I gotta go.
Daddy.
Say good morning, Justin.
Da, 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 da.
Good morning, Justin. Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair.
Good night,
Night,
Kiki.
Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of TWIS and a fun after show conversation. Yeah, right. Ignore AM radio, Blair. Just listen to the good stuff. Tune into
Yeah, of course. Oh, please.
the good source.
Radio. What's that?
What's radio? Get yourself a good playlist
Yeah.
put together by an algorithm. But
No.
anyway, we'll see everybody next week. Thanks so much for being here, and stay safe, stay healthy, stay curious, and stay lucky.
And stay out of the ocean.
Yeah.
You got no business being in there. What are you
don't
doing?
go.
Leave it alone.
Just normal
wish you-
normal depths.
I wish you all well at normal depths, everyone. Good night.